Hi there, John McAdams here with you again. In this video, we're going to do another ballistic gel test. Specifically, we will test out this Hornady Precision Hunter ammo for the 7mm Rem Mag with their 162 grain ELD-X bullet. I'll shoot this ammo from a Remington Model 700 rifle with a 24-inch barrel. That was the same rifle I used to test 7mm Remington Magnum velocities in another video. Check that one out for details, but long story short, I think this particular rifle just has a so-called slow barrel on it. Everything I've ever shot out of this rifle, when I measured the velocity, I saw was 100 to 200 feet per second slower than advertised. Now that has been true for Barnes, Federal, Remington, and Winchester ammo, in addition to this particular Hornady ammo we're going to talk about in this video. Now this particular Hornady Precision Hunter ammo in that video was going about 100 feet per second slower than advertised. So I'm guessing that's going to be the case in this video too. I'll shoot this ammo into gel blocks 50 yards away. And since it is probably going to start out going slower than advertised, I think we're going to observe an impact velocity at 50 yards that's pretty similar to what you'd get at 100 to 200 yards with the same ammo if you are obtaining a muzzle velocity close to what Hornady advertises with for your particular rifle. So with all that in mind, this test should hopefully provide a good demonstration on how this ammo will perform at a pretty reasonable shooting distance on game afield. And by the way, I will measure the velocity of this stuff with my Garmin chronograph, so we'll know how fast it's going. So let's get shooting, see how it does in the gel. Okay, so as you saw, that impact knocked the first gel block off the table, but I just put it right back on the table here, right next to the second one. And here are my initial impressions of it. Got a nice short neck, pretty substantial temporary wound cavity, lots of lead fragments radiating outwards from it, like there and there. Bullet penetrated in a reasonably straight line to about there in the second gel block. So I made it about a little over 3/4 of the way through it. And then you can see right there, it veered off a little bit in that second gel block when it hit it. But all in all, still pretty good performance with an impressive temporary wound cavity and pretty darn good penetration. I'll get these blocks cleaned up, get you some detailed measurements here in a second. Okay, so I pulled that bullet out of the gel block and it looks pretty good. A little mangled, but it held together reasonably well. First off, original bullet weight was 162 grains. I put this one on the scale and it now weighs 96.7 grains. So it lost quite a bit of mass, but that's still about 60% weight retention. Next, original bullet diameter was 0.284 inches. This one now measures 0.805 inches. That is well over 2x bullet expansion, nearly 3x expansion. Now, as you can see, that really big expanded diameter is due in part to the fact that part of the jacket kicked out to the side at kind of an odd angle. Now, I would not say that this bullet looks picture perfect, but it's still pretty good, and the core and jacket did not separate. I measured this bullet muzzle velocity at 2,802 feet per second, so nearly 175 feet per second slower than advertised. At 50 yards, it was still going about 2,730 feet per second. So with that in mind, this bullet held together pretty well for what was still a pretty darn fast impact velocity like that. Now for reference, you shoot this exact same bullet at 2,975 feet per second as advertised, it won't slow down to 2,730 feet per second until it travels about 165 yards downrange instead of 50 yards like we observed here. Now this bullet, as you can see in the gel, has a very short neck and a substantial temporary wound cavity that is both wide and long. It's not excessively wide though. Some people who don't like the projectile say the ELD-X is basically a fancy Varmint bullet or a target bullet with a new name on it. Well, it held together really well here and it penetrated great in this test. However, as you see,
there's lots of fragmentation, lots of small lead fragments radiating outwards from the main wound track. The end result, though, was 28 inches of penetration in gel. That is excellent. More than enough penetration for hunting deer, antelope, feral hogs, black bear, and even elk. And we got well over 2x and nearly 3x bullet expansion, combined with about 60% weight retention. But like I said, though, velocity was slower than advertised, but that is typical with everything I have shot out of this rifle. I'm not trying to pick on Hornady here. With all that said, the ELD-X is a pretty soft bullet. Hornady designed this round to still perform well at extended ranges where impact velocities are low. To do that, this bullet needs to be soft enough to still mushroom at those slower velocities you will encounter at really long range, where the bullet has really slowed down. But on the other hand, they did also build some features into this projectile to prevent excessive expansion at close range, high velocity impacts. These features include their so-called interlock ring and a tapered jacket that gets thicker as you get closer to the bullet base. Now, I have yet to experience an incident myself on an animal where the bullet quote-unquote exploded on impact. However, I could visualize a circumstance where you take a high velocity load like this one, shoot it at something really big at close range, like an elk at 30 yards. And then especially if you need to punch through a shoulder blade or something like that, I could see that bullet potentially expanding too much and not penetrating enough to reach the vitals. Or perhaps maybe only some small fragments of the bullet reach the vitals. At least in this particular case, the bullet still performed really well with about 2,700 feet per second of impact velocity. A faster impact velocity would likely result in a wider temporary wound cavity, even more bullet fragmentation, and likely even more expansion. But that would probably result in less penetration and less bullet weight retention. Likewise, a slower impact velocity, for instance, you take this exact same ammo, shoot an animal 200, 300, 400 plus yards away, you're probably going to get a smaller wound cavity, less bullet expansion, and higher weight retention, and probably more penetration with all other things being equal. But the details will vary depending on the exact impact velocity, though. The same is also true with the animal that you're talking about and where you hit the animal. You'll get more fragmentation and more expansion if you hit something like a bone, regardless of it's something small like a rib or something larger like a shoulder blade. And you'll get less expansion if you take that exact same bullet and same velocity and you just slip it right between the ribs and it doesn't hit anything except the hide, a little bit of meat between the ribs, the lungs go out the opposite side. So there are a lot of factors at play here that determine how much the bullet's going to penetrate, how much it expands, all of those things. Your mileage may vary, but all in all, I'm very pleased with the performance of this ammunition and it looks like it performs as advertised. I personally do not think Hornady Precision Hunter ammo is ideal for closer range shots on game, especially bigger game, and especially out of a big magnum like the 7mm Rem Mag. But in fairness, that's not what this ammo or this cartridge were designed for. No, both are better suited for shots at longer range. It will darn sure work at closer range, but you're going to probably have a lot of meat loss from that high velocity impact and all those lead fragments spiraling outwards from the main bullet path. The bullet probably won't penetrate as well either, so exit wounds are going to be less likely, but it depends on the animal and it depends on the shot angle. I have not experienced this myself, but I have heard stories of guys shooting a deer at, say, 50 yards with this 7mm Mag Precision Hunter ammo, where the deer only runs like 50 yards afterwards. But it's really hard to find because the bullet didn't exit and it didn't leave much of a blood trail. Well, I think too high of an impact velocity is to blame for incidents like that. The bullet probably shredded the vitals, but expanded too much and fragmented to such a large extent that the remaining parts of the bullet didn't have enough momentum remaining to exit the far side of the animal. So you have an animal that the vitals were shredded on it, and it did not run very far at all. It was killed very quickly and cleanly, but because there's no exit wound, it's just hard to find. But you take that exact same ammo and shoot the same deer in the same spot at 150 or 200 yards or farther instead of something really close like 50 yards. At those longer distances, the bullet is going to be going slower and it will probably still do a lot of damage to the vitals, like we saw in this test, simulating a 165, 170-ish yard shot if the ammo is performing as fast as advertised, and the bullet will probably penetrate better and probably also exit. However, while I do not like this ammo for use up close, I think it's great for longer shots. Like I said earlier, probably 150 yards and farther, especially if your rifle is generating muzzle velocities over 2,900 feet per second with this ammo. Even with the slower muzzle velocity I measured with this stuff out of this particular rifle, this bullet remains above Hornady's minimum recommended impact velocity out past 900 yards, which is way farther than most people have any business shooting anyway. In a case where you're shooting out past, say, 300 yards, then this Precision Hunter ammo with the ELD-X bullet can really start to be a much more effective projectile than a lot of other common hunting bullets. So like I said, when used under conditions like it was designed for, I think the 7mm Rem Mag with 162 grain ELD-X is an awesome combination that delivers a combination of great expansion, a large wound cavity, and enough penetration for hunting all manner of game, from deer up to and including much bigger game like elk. Feel free to leave a comment on this video with personal experiences you have had with the ELD-X bullet, especially in something like the 7mm Remington Magnum. What sort of performance did you get on game? What was the shot distance? What animal did you shoot? What happened after the shot? All of those things. I also covered this stuff in even more detail in my premium Hunting Guns 101 training. Link is also in the video description. That training also contains a thorough overview of external and terminal ballistics, so you will learn how bullets actually kill animals, as well as some specific examples of rifles and scopes ideally suited to a variety of hunting situations. You'll also discover the various factors that affect bullet penetration and expansion, and you'll learn a couple different methods of choosing the ideal cartridge bullet combination for a hunt that will deliver ideal terminal performance on whatever game you are hunting. Subscribers to my premium Hunting Guns 101 training will also receive access to my extensive and growing library of ballistic gel test results, most of which are not on YouTube. In addition to the 30-30 Winchester, that library has gel test results for multiple different popular hunting loads for cartridges like the 223 Remington, 6.5 Grendel, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, 270 Winchester, 7mm Rem Mag, 7mm PRC, 300 Blackout, 308 Winchester, 30-06 Springfield, and 300 Win Mag, among others. Once again, this list is always growing. I have also done ballistic gel tests with actual deer and elk shoulder blades embedded in the gel to give you an idea of how impacting bone affects the performance of different bullets as well. And those gel test results demonstrate the wide spectrum of results you can expect from different cartridges and bullets that you can use to tailor your hunting load to the specific situation. Once again, more details on all of that are available at the link in the video description. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and good hunting.